Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Criterion, your regular magazine of the movies, with exclusive reviews and previews of new and forthcoming releases in the collection. And in this edition, we go back to 1930 with Howard Hughes' classic war film Hell's Angels, coming to the collection in 4K UHD. Howard Hughes was a prolific Hollywood director with a plethora of classic movies to his credit. He was also an aerospace engineer and a film producer, so that put him in a great position to direct Hell's Angels from 1930, actually his second film. It was made at the start of talking movies and was a World War I aviation epic. Now, the film was pre-code, and it was directed and produced by Hughes, and the director of the dialogue for the film was James Whale. It was written by Harry Bain and Howard Estabrook, and it starred Ben Lyon, James Hall, and Jean Harlow. It was released through United Artists Pictures, and it followed two dissimilar brothers, both members of the British Royal Flying Corps, during the First World War. Now, Hell's Angels was originally shot as a silent film, but when Talking Pictures launched in the late 20s, it was changed to a sound picture. And it was in production, in fact, for 3 years, and the studio spared no expense at that time, with a final exorbitant production budget of $8.2 million. Aerospace was Hughes's first love, and so getting aircraft to feature in the airborne sequences wasn't an issue for him. He also served as a pilot himself, but was coaxed not to do certain more perilous stunts by the principal stunt pilot, Paul Mantz. But despite the warnings, he did crash, undergoing a skull fracture resulting in facial surgery, and in addition, 3 other stunt pilots and a mechanic died during the filming. The two American brothers are Honourable Roy and Flippant Monty, and they're attending school at Oxford in England when the First World War breaks out. Their good friend Carl gets called back to Germany, while Roy and Monty each enlist in the Royal Flying Corps. Roy because it's the right thing to do, and Monty because he's enticed by a girl who calls him Chicken. In the Royal Flying Corps, they both help bring down a Zeppelin that attacks Britain and spearheads a secret mission to blow up a weapons depot behind the enemy lines. Now, neither Roy nor Monty are particularly appealing characters in the film, though, and while they may perfectly represent the type of Americans you'd have seen in the war, that's the rational coward and the determined fool, there's no chemistry here on screen. The actors, that's Ben Lyon and James Hall, don't resemble brothers in any way, and rarely do they seem to share any familial intimacy. Neither do they succeed at being wholly compelling. Lyon's Monty is the voice of both cowardice and self-preserving reason, only to toss this aside at several distinct points throughout the film, really out of screenwriting necessity. But odds are, if you've never seen Hell's Angels before, you won't really care about the part of the movie surrounding the brothers and their woes. The movie is infamous for 2 things, and that's the introduction of a certain blonde bombshell to the world, and the impressive aerial fight sequences that cost several World War veterans their lives during the film's production. Now, on the latter point first, the aerial combat sequences are indeed dazzling. The first sequence, for instance, it's a nighttime raid on London. It's the more impressive of the 2 lengthy battles. Tinted purple to indicate it's a nighttime raid, we first meet the attacking Zeppelin and its crew, discussing their plan to detonate Trafalgar Square in the heart of London. And like a lot of early 30s films, the Germans aren't complete monsters here. They're just about as hungry for glory In fact, as much as their counterparts are. Carl is among them as the bombardier, though his loyalty to his old friends here puts him in a moral bind. Now, the second aerial battle in the film, this pushes the film towards its climax, and it's more instructive in the field of bombing runs than in many visceral thrills. The half of the film after the intermission lacks any colorization or tinting, making it less visually engaging than the plumes of colour that haunted the film's first portion. There are still a few stunning moments though, such as a mid-air collision, or simply the visceral thrill of seeing the actors from the film so clearly participating in the airborne frenzy. But for all this, the fights, while undeniably impressive and massive for that of a 1930 film, still appeal to other similar filmed battles. In fact, the movie would probably be all but forgotten today, besides its scandalous history, and of course for its star-making moment, for someone who would go on to symbolise much of early 1930s cinema. Jean Harlow's performance in the film is much better than what you'd be getting over the next few years from her in pictures like The Public Enemy and The Secret Six. Now, this film's massive filming time must have worked to her advantage, because she's left to simply light up the screen, and she does this admirably. She possesses a weird rawness about her, something that makes her seem more callous and desirable. A playgirl whose heart is only after her own, and yet the selfishness only seems to feed back into her allure. Now, her character of Helen may also be the most interesting thing about the movie. A pleasure seeker who holds little or no moral regard for the men who devote themselves to her. And while Monty is a grade A womanizer, even he is shocked and shamed by her callousness. It doesn't teach him a lesson, of course, because none of these characters actually learn anything throughout the film. Now, there's simply an undeniable coldness to the film's view of the war and personal interactions. It's a wholly unsentimental movie, with Monty's belief that war doesn't change you, just reveals who you really are, being rather prescient. Now, Helen and Monty are definitely selfish. They're able to survive and to thrive by their ability to feed on others and avoid the machine of death that surrounds them. Now, factoring this into either narrative inelegance or cynical resonance from the First World War, it's hard to find much to cheer about in the story of Hell's Angels. But the visual extravagances it presents, that's the battles and the star in the making, turn it into an important, if somewhat clumsy, footnote in Hollywood history. Now, as I've mentioned, most of the footage, of course, is black and white, but there are several one-colour tinted scenes for dramatic effect taking place in the first half of the film, such as the nighttime gun duel, part screen full colour for the flames consuming the German Zeppelin, and full screen full colour for one sequence, which in fact is the only colour footage in Harlow's career. Now, in spite of the difficulties, it was and is still today considered a landmark of early sound and colour use, and of course of the epic action film genre. Now, a word about Magnascope. What is Magnascope? Well, it was an early large screen format used only on a few movies like 1926's Old Ironsides and the Oscar-winning Best Picture from 1927, Wings. Now, for certain key scenes, the image would be enlarged in the cinema to roughly 4 times its normal size. Now, the film comes to the Criterion collection with a new 4K digital restoration of the Magnascope Roadshow version of the film, and it has a mono soundtrack going across a 4K UHD and Blu-ray disc with the following special features. New interview with Robert Legato, that's the visual effects supervisor for the Howard Hughes biopic The Aviator, on the groundbreaking aerial visuals of Hell's Angels. New interview with critic Farron Smith-Name about actor Jean Harlow. Outtakes from the film with the commentary provided by Harlow biographer David Sten. Plus an essay by author and journalist Fred Kaplan. And the new cover art, which is very striking, is designed by Sam Hadley. Hell's Angels broke new technical ground, making use of early sound and colour technologies, and captured some of the most thrilling dogfight scenes ever filmed. The film has a running time of 131 minutes, it's in black and white and colour, and it's in mixed aspect ratios of 137:1 and 154:1, and it releases in the US on Tuesday the 18th of November, and it's here in the UK on Monday the 24th of November as a 4K UHD and Blu-ray combo with a spine number of 1288. In the next edition of Let's Talk Criterion, we'll be taking a look at the Spanish surrealist director Luis Bernal's film Elle, a fiendish tale of love gone wrong, set in Mexico City. It joins the collection on 4K UHD. So until then, from me, as always, it's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.